Hello, everybody, and welcome to my show. That was Tobacco here on KRFF 95.9 Radio Free Fargo.org. Every Thursday I get in here, Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. I'm Wilson. Welcome. We talk about cannabis legalization, the benefits of cannabis, and cannabis news in general. Right before me, Side Stage with Trav, 1 to 3. Right after me, Stinky Ots, Music Mart. Then a little bit of Muzak from Fred, spelled with a P, our AI automated robot DJ. That'll get you until the evening. Black Ring Ritual, I think, for now. Otherwise, it's just going to be a big, wide open hole here after Stinky Arts. So if you're interested in doing DJ and stuff, get a hold of us. KRFF 95.9, RadioFreeFargo.org. Again, I get in here at 4 o'clock. 4:20, open a big fat bag of cannabis news. This Thursday's no different. I got a little North Dakota news. I got a little South Dakota news. But what's absent is Minnesota. We got nothing. No committees being passed. It's almost like it just fell off. But we know things are still happening. And once that does, I'll keep you posted on Minnesota's quick and fast trajectory to cannabis legalization, as it moves steadily and quickly through the committees to a floor vote, which, if you listen to Waltz, he says by June, it'll be a done deal. Then if you listen to a more hesitant person, they'll say, well, no way, we got so many things we got to deal with, it could be 10 years. But I tend to think Waltz's trajectory is a little more accurate. I believe cannabis was put here by God himself to use as we see fit, and by fit, I mean responsibly as adults. You can overdo cheeseburgers. So, I don't want anybody thinking I'm encouraging sin. I'm saying cannabis was grown out of the ground as a male and a female. The male's kind of tall and spindly, and the female's pretty. So, I just assume that, God put it here for us to use as we see fit, and I worship him every Sunday at Antioch Church, 417 Main Avenue. 10 a.m. we do a Life After Recovery class. So if you got a monkey on your back, or you've knocked the monkey off yourself, but you can still feel him pulling on your pant leg, we can probably help you there. Come on through. 11 a.m. is worship. It's when we jump up and down and run around and give our props to the man upstairs. And there you have it. Canna-Talk ND with Wilson every Thursday, 4:20. Open a big fat bag of cannabis news. And you can rest assured that that's happening. I got a bunch of stuff to talk about. We got a bunch of stuff. A bunch of stuff on this show to talk to you about. This show is brought to you by Black Cottage Alchemy, blackcottagealchemy.com, Black Cottage Alchemy on Facebook, Body Butter, 1,600 mgs of CBD, that's locally grown hemp, colloidal silver. I got this weird spot on my face. It's either cancer or an age spot. And so I've started rubbing it on there. Hopefully I'm not going to die. But it's blue. And I'm a Google freak, clickety, 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 and it says I'm going to die pretty soon. Or I just have an age spot. So I'm going to be putting that body butter on, and hopefully, I'll be alive next Thursday. But anyway, 4:20, we open a big fat bag of cannabis news. Again, after me, Stinky Arts, Music Mart, Canna-Talk ND on Instagram, but I'm not there anymore because I just removed everything from my phone. I'm not on any social media. YouTube, Canna-Talk ND on YouTube minus the music. And then on the podcast platforms, you can find me. So there's that. But you won't see any updating on the Instagram because I just don't even know how to get to it anymore. I don't have my password, so I don't know how to delete it proper. So it'll still be up, but I'm just not. I ain't going there. I ain't scrolling nowhere. I ain't doing nothing when it comes to Instagram or Facebook or any of that stuff. Now, I still have a YouTube needle in my arm, but we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll go completely blackout on social media. We'll see. But anyway, let's get into a little Toonie Tunes. We'll come back. I'll talk to you about North Dakota, maybe a little South Dakota. Here's the Subdudes, Love Has the Power, 95.9. Love has the power. The Subdudes here on KRFF 95.9, RadioFreeFargo.org, streaming everywhere in the blue and green marble you hail from. We can get into your ear hole. Just clickety-clickety on the old computer there, or your phone, or whatever you got. Your 8-track hooked up to a satellite. I don't know. Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. Every Thursday I get in here, 4:20, open a big fat bag of cannabis news, and that's on deck for you. But I have some time now, so we're going to talk about some local news regarding cannabis. Now, if you joined me last week, you will know that North Dakota had a measure to, well, it originally started as a good one, of course. You know, it had all the trappings of trusting the people. Certainly over 65 would be able to self-certify for medical cannabis. Now, I was on board immediately. Because especially, I mean, how can we say people 65 years and older, after they've lived all that life, all that experience, you know, you want them to pass down information and knowledge to the youngsters, but we can't trust them to self-certify for a cannabis, you know, for a medicine. It's natural, you know. It's kind of funny because if it went backwards, right? Like let's just say in another world, all the medicines were natural and they grew and you could almost just medicate yourself in your garden. But there was these things called aspirin or Benadryl or Dilaudid or hydrocodones that people were telling you worked a lot better, a lot easier, you felt better, it was great. And you wanted to self-certify for that. I would say, well, let's jump you through some hoops. Let's not be so rash. Let's hold on a second. You mean the stuff growing in your garden isn't working anymore? Why not? Right? But instead, that's what they prefer you to be on. But yet they don't want you to believe there's zero conspiracy when it comes to the pharmaceutical companies lining their pockets with cash from one thing and no cash from self-certification of medical cannabis. Pharmaceutical companies don't get any money from that. And then if it's a cure, then what are we talking about? We're talking about not needing meds after a certain while. So I think it's kind of insulting for them to have removed the 65 and over ability to self-certify for medical cannabis. I think it's just as insulting as stinking vets not being allowed to utilize cannabis for PTSD without any hoops to jump through. You know, they're out there protecting our freedoms. If they say it works, just let them use it. Just let them use it. Oh, well, they got to sign up. They got to go through some stuff. They got to pass. Let them use it. That guy with no arm, that got it blown off, jumping in front of, you know, your son to save your son. He says cannabis helps his nightmares. Let him use it. Same thing with 65 years and older people. You don't think they've lived long enough to know what's best? Let them decide. You know, the grandparents that you're allowing to expound wisdom that'll carry their grandkids to the next level. But yet, let's not let them self-certify in natural medicine. I say that's crap. So anyway, that got amended out. That was like a no-go. However, the North Dakota governor signs bill letting people in hospice care self-certify as medical cannabis patients. So, I mean, I hate to be harsh, but hospice care means that you about out the door, friend. Nobody got no more hope for you to live. Terminally ill patients will be able to use proof of their admittance in hospice care in lieu of a doctor's written recommendation to register as a medical cannabis patient. But it seems to me like, how can you're self-certifying after a doctor's recommendation, after proof of admittance? It doesn't seem like you're really self-certifying. It seems like there are some hoopy hoops that you're having to jump through. However, I say great. However, I don't love that they amended out the original bill, which would have been 65 plus and older, could self-certify. I'd like to see that come back on the floor, to be honest with you. So, what I like quoting, and I quoted this last week, Roars, the Senate Majority Caucus leader, she added that cannabis can be used as a substitute for opioids, and so access to cannabis could help them be more alert in those final days and final hours of their lives that they spend with their families, unquote. Now, isn't that just a crazy quote? Nobody sees this phrase as nuts. It can be used as a substitute for heroin-type drugs, Oxycontins, Fentanyl. Cannabis can be used as a substitute for fentanyl, says Roars. And so access to cannabis could help them be more alert. What do you mean more alert? They're less alert on opiates? Of course they are. All snowed over, staring and drooling. So what are we talking about here? Why couldn't 65 plus and older people also be more alert in just their days, right? In just the days they have. However many that is, 50 years, 30 years, whatever. Because if they're using it for a substitute for opiates, I would say make it very easy to self-certify. I'm surprised this is such a hard issue. It's certainly way less harmful than opiates. So why are we making it hard to self-certify? Let's just give it all to them. I mean, because we got no problems giving them opiates, right? That's no problem. So I don't know. I say at least the end of life, you don't have to use horribly snowed over meds. You know what I'm saying? Well, let's get you into some music here. This is Hedgehog's Dream by Dan Horn on 95.9 Radio Free Fargo. Wow, I almost forgot what I was doing there. Hedgehog's Dream, Dan Horn on 95.9 Radio Free Fargo. Programming is being underwritten by Drummer's Journey. Drummer's Journey offers percussion instruments, hardware, electronics, accessories, and more. They have full service for drummers, including repair, custom building, and lessons. Drummer's Journey is located at Highway 10 East Mall in Moorhead, Minnesota. Their hours are Monday through Thursday, 11 to 7, Fridays and Saturdays, 11 to 5, Sundays, noon to 5. For more info, check drummersjourney.com. They have a profile on Facebook. Canna-Talk ND with Wilson every Thursday, 4:20. I open a big fat bag of cannabis news, and that's happening now.
Hey, it's Phil from Canna-Heads. Like this episode? Hit that like button. And if you enjoy the show, hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on cannabis news, local and national. Listen live on 95.9 in the Fargo, North Dakota region from 4 to 5 p.m. on Thursday. For our non-Fargo region friends, you can listen on your favorite podcast platform. Just search Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. Now enjoy the show.
All right, we'll make that quick. All right, I'm back. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Canna-Talk ND with Wilson at 4:20. I open a big fat bag of cannabis news. I even got a cocaine story in here, which has nothing to do with cannabis. But they smuggled it in flooring sheets, which is kind of new. So I thought, well, that'll be interesting. And again, interesting news is kind of what I want to talk about. You know, if I could come up with something else that was, you know, that had my own niche, you know, I mean, everybody's talking about the news, you know, and this week we've got some. There's some polarizing news for that matter. But everybody talking about that. Everybody and their brothers got an opinion about what happened this week. What people aren't talking about is North Dakota cannabis news, South Dakota cannabis news, and coke pressed into flooring tiles in Peru. That's your boy Wilson. I'm going to do that. So you're welcome. But anyway, let's get at it. Like I mentioned in the first segment, North Dakota governor signs bill letting people in hospice care self-certify as medical cannabis patients. Now, originally, this bill was created for people 65 years and older to self-certify, which would have been a major win. I'm not saying this isn't a win, but like I said, it's insulting to people 68 years old, 75. Like, you're going to tell me my mom at 75 shouldn't be allowed to self-certify after raising 5 kids? She's got 4 million grandkids, a wealth of knowledge. She's managed to stay alive this long. And you're not going to give her the respect to self-certify for a natural plant? However, you got her, you know, you got so many prescriptions. She's, you know, she's got all kinds of synthetic meds that you'll give her, you know. But how dare you let her decide on her own? So I say that's a loss when it comes to the ability for legislators to trust people, especially the ones that are voting them in. All right. So South Dakota. Now, South Dakota governor has signed 8 cannabis-related bills this session, and they're horrible. Christy, don't know I'm saying. I don't know about her. But anyway, cannabis moment. I talked about this. They wanted, now this was just in transport, right? Let's say you're growing CBD or hemp. It has to be 1% or lower. Like the guy can come and test, the medical, whatever the guy is, the tester guy. He comes in and tests your crop. If it's over a certain amount, and a lot of times your hemp is going to blow hot right at harvest time. But then it gets, by the time it gets to the shelf, it doesn't have that. It's back down to the 0.003. But in the initial stages, in that transporting stage, they wanted to increase the hemp THC limits during processing to 5%. Now, I would argue 5% THC with a high CBD, that's some cannabis flower, friend. That's good stuff. I mean, if you flooded the market with that, that brings me back to 1992, dude. Bruh. But I'm saying 5% THC with, say, 30% CBD, man, that's living. I would tout that all day long. But anyway, South Dakota governor, of course, she vetoes this bill to increase hemp THC limits during processing. And she's got a bunch of wacky things to say about it. She says increasing the THC level to 5% would hinder our successful hemp program and undermine enforcement of our drug laws. What? That don't even make any sense. I don't even know what that means. How could she? I hate when they make these blanket quotes, and I'm supposed to know what you're saying. How would it hinder the successful hemp program? It would allow more hemp to be allowed into the program. There would be more competition. More people could make money. And then undermine enforcement of our drug laws. Now, I don't know what that means either. We're just talking about hemp and transport. Sometimes we'll have a higher amount at the harvesting stage. That's just science. All right? That's just science. And I have a friend in North Dakota that had to get rid of all of her beautiful plants because at harvest time, she waited a little too long, and it was higher than the recommended whatever. However, in the processing of this hemp plant, they would get removed. So, anyway, Governor Kristi Noem vetoed a bill Thursday that would increase the amount of THC that industrial hemp processors can have in their products. The compound in cannabis plants that produces a high is the THC when present in sufficient amount. Hemp, unlike its cousin, is low in THC. Hemp plants can be used in a multitude of products. So, she says the bill would jeopardize the effectiveness and safety of the state's industrial hemp industry by creating conflict with federal law while also allowing cannabis products to be considered hemp products. We're talking about hemp here, all right? And hemp has a little THC in it. We're just saying to allow more to be processed, a lot of times, right at harvest, it spikes the THC. So I don't know. She vetoed it. So legislators will return to Pierre on Monday to consider the hemp veto and other vetoes from Noem. It takes 2/3 vote to override a veto. I doubt that they'll even give it. I doubt that'll happen. So under current state law, up to 1% of THC is allowed in a hemp product in process. The product in process definition includes hemp that's being transported from one place to another during process. The bill would increase the limit to 5%. So she says, if I allowed this bill to become law, it would jeopardize the clearly expressed will of the people. I don't understand it. I don't understand that. We're just talking about in processing here. Classifying cannabis as hemp. So she said that the change would increase the THC level for crops in the field. Representative Oren said that's absolutely a lie. That's not true. The only time we're allowing it above 0.3% is processor to processor. Crops are still under 0.3. Biomass is still under 0.3. And end products are still under 0.3. The higher THC levels are temporary and tied to the production of hemp-derived products. While hemp plants in the field have a THC below 0.3%, processors have concentrated levels of THC when extracting oils and CBD from the crops for products such as lip balms, oils, and lotions, Christy. So, Those higher levels of THC are all but unavoidable in the production of consumer hemp products. Processors themselves are not federally regulated. In other states with hemp processors, turn a blind eye to processing-related concentrations over 0.3%. South Dakota would join 2 other states, Colorado and New York, were to allow the 5% limit. So it's still happening. All right, the 1% level was a compromise when the hemp program started. But processors exceed 1% THC pretty much every time before THC levels are reduced again when processing is finished. Raising the limit to 5% would ensure processors are producing legally. So here's what they're saying. They're saying processors are turning a blind eye. And processors exceed 1% pretty much every time. This would just ensure processors are producing legally. Well, she just said this is about safety and stuff. She doesn't even know what she's talking about. If we could have 0 THC in our hemp products, we'd love that. It's a pain in our hinder. We don't want THC. We just want the CBD and the isolates and the oil. But when you extract, you concentrate the oil, and that raises the THC level. So, boo. I thought I didn't think there would be some weird issue with that. All right. Now, let's keep going. And here's some more the governor has signed. Completely opposite. I mean, they're crazy. South Dakota Kristi Noem has signed a total of 8 cannabis-related bills this session. South Dakota governor last week signed 3 cannabis bills related into law. This session, she signed a total of 8. So, last Thursday, Noem signed House Bill 1053, which bans women who are pregnant or breastfeeding from obtaining a medical cannabis certification, which is ridiculous because they're not going to be pregnant forever, right? And, I mean, I would argue that, I don't know about this breastfeeding thing. I'm not so sure that's a great idea. You're cheeching it up and the baby's drinking the milk after you bong rip. I don't know, I do know that for stress and carrying a baby stressful, that there's been studies done that there really is no long-term effects to the child. But again, I don't totally hate that one, So House Bill 1154 creates new misdemeanor charges for medical cannabis practitioners who break a variety of new rules included in the bill. While Senate Bill 1 adds more qualifying conditions. So that was cool. Okay, so medical cannabis practitioners would be charged with a misdemeanor for directing patients to specific dispensaries or caregivers in exchange for payment. Well, that's wrong no matter what we're discussing. Advertising in a dispensary. That seems a little funny. Issuing medical cannabis certifications while having a financial stake in a cannabis business. Okay. Conducting medical assessments in a place licensed to sell alcohol. So what are we talking about? You post up in Bobby's Bar and Grill? So, Senate bill adds AIDS and HIV, ALS, MS, and cancer to it. The PTSD is also added to the qualifying list, so I say that's a win. Noem also signed the House Bill 1132, which adjusts the duties of the Medical Cannabis Oversight Committee, allowing them to make recommendations regarding the medical and clinical aspects of the medical cannabis program. That sounds like a lot of power. So, Senate Bill 27, which amends the definition of medical cannabis practitioner and states that hemp-derived THC must come either from industrial hemp or be in a product approved by FDA. So, there you have it. Noem, of course, vetoed a measure that would have increased allowable THC levels in unprocessed hemp from 0.3 to 5%. That's what you should focus on, because that stinks. This is Cannabis Moment. Cannabis is most prevalent drug, and they really got to change that drug part. In military drug test, Department of Defense tells senators with Delta 8 THC second. And the crazy thing is that there's so many states and they're using it medically. It's just, the gray area here is just ridiculous, So it also answered the senator's question. So in a letter responding to a 2022 inquiry from Senator Ed, DOD explained last month what it's doing to combat drug overdoses, promote harm reduction, with a focus on address opioid misuse. So, 73.4% of all unique drug-positive active duty service members was cannabis. Delta 8 THC showed up 42.7%. So, most of the Delta 8 also contain the Delta 9. This is due to Delta 9 contamination during the production process of Delta 8. Cocaine was detected in 14.4%. So, it's like, and I would argue that if you did, assessments on their ability to fight for your freedom, it's not going to change much. So, but they did all kinds of crazy things. One of the first attempts by the U.S. military to communicate its cannabis ban came in the form of a fake press conference in 2019, where officials took scripted questions that touched on hypotheticals like the eating cannabis-infused burritos and washing cats with CBD shampoos. That was staged around the time DOD codified its rules around the non-intoxicating cannabinoid. So, with respect to THC, some branches have been cooler, like Air Force, that sort of thing. The Navy, for its part, issued an initial notice that they're barred from using CBD and hemp products no matter their legality. Then in 2020, it released an update explaining why it enacted the rule change. The Naval War College has gone so far as to warn sailors and Marines about new hemp products on the market, like the Pepsi-owned Rockstar energy drink that contains hemp seed oil. So goofy. You're listening to Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. I'm Wilson. Every Thursday, I get in here 4 o'clock, 4:20, open a big fat bag of cannabis news, and that's what's happening now. So let's talk about this. High Times magazine. Police in Peru seized $20 million of coke headed for Turkey. Ooh, that's a lot. And I'm glad that's off the streets, am I right? More of that should be happening. Law enforcement authorities in Peru said this week that they seized more than 2 tons of coke. Reuters reports that the drug bust happened Friday at a warehouse at Peru's biggest port, El Callao, just outside the capital, Lima. This is the first incident that we know of in which the cargo was in Peruvian ports and its final destination was Turkey. Usually we are aware of ports in Belgium, the Netherlands, and so on. According to Reuters, police displayed the cocaine, which had been fixed to rubber sheets to appear as hundreds of ceramic tiles packed in wooden boxes inside a shipping container. At least $20 million. So, man, that's a lot of nose holes taking a lot of coke. But anyway, drunk drivers. This is from ganjapreneur.com. Drunk drivers are way more likely to get into car accidents than stoned drivers. And I would imagine, I would argue again that cannabis becomes like your parent, where booze goes, hey, you can drive fast, put on fog hat, let's rock, and then you slam into a tree like an idiot because the alcohol's impaired your judgment. Where cannabis kind of becomes your judge. Like, I don't know, maybe you should just stay home, you put a little extra in the bongy bong, or you ate that extra square in 4 hours, you may not be able to get back from Walmart, which again is kind of a joke because of course you can. I personally, and I guess I'm not so much a rampant smoker like I used to because I'm a little more responsible, and God kind of convicts me to embellish. But I never got to the point where I thought, I am so messed up from this product that I can't function. It's probably possible, like with edibles and stuff, but you steadily become stupid on booze. And I don't know how many people that have got into issues because they over-imbibed. And that's legal, see? So that's the thing that kind of messes with me, It's legal to buy something that literally will render you worthless and scary and dangerous behind the wheel. And illicit violence said, beat up your domestic partner on that last shot of whiskey, So, whatever. A team of researchers from Canada conducted this new study to discover whether driving under the influence of cannabis is as dangerous as driving drunk. Out of this group, the study authors singled out nearly 7,000 drivers who were tested for drugs after their accidents. More than 70% of these injured drivers were completely sober at the time of their accident. Less than 300 drivers, 3% of the total, was found to have THC levels, which is Canada's legal limit for stone driving. In contrast, more than 3 times as many drivers were over the country's legal blood alcohol content. Drivers with high blood alcohol levels were more likely to be seriously injured in these accidents than sober or stoned drivers. Study also reports that drunk drivers were more likely to get into accidents at night or on the weekends, while stoned drivers were more likely to be involved in daytime or weekday collisions. So, people between the ages of 35 and 65 had the higher odds of being over the legal THC limit, while rural drivers and men 19 to 44 were more likely to be over the blood alcohol limit, and that's boring. High times. Men who stabbed hemp store clerk, he's to face the death penalty. A convicted killer will pay the ultimate price for stabbing a hemp store clerk in North Carolina last year. He will be charged with capital murder for the fatal stabbing of a woman working at a hemp store. Security footage shows what appears to be Haywood asking her about products before pulling out a knife and demanding her to empty the register. He certainly didn't want any hemp. Then he stabbed her multiple times, killed her even though she complied with his demands, a dirty dog. This is especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel given the facts and circumstances. So these are all aggravating factors where the state is empowered to seek the death penalty. Haywood removed the cash from the register and then attacked Bracey with a knife, stabbing her multiple times. Haywood cut his hand during the attack and was seen on video bleeding from his hand. He took about $750 from the register, put it in his backpack. Then he swapped out clothes to disguise himself as he left. So, Haywood's mother, the attacker was turned in by his own mother after she saw his face on TV. Well. Anyway, let me just mention this, and I'm about done here. This is from Ganjapreneur. Montana bill aims to eliminate adult use cannabis sales. A bill proposed in Montana would eliminate dispensaries in the state and raise the tax on medical cannabis from 4 to 20%. According to the bill text, the measure sponsored by state senator intends to reduce the demand for cannabis sales in Montana. There's no co-sponsors, and it's currently in the Business and Economic Affairs Committee. Adult use cannabis sales in Montana have generated $54 million in tax revenue. That sounds like a lot since sales commenced in January 2022. So adult use sales are taxed 20% by the state, and some counties add an additional. He would also cap the THC potency at 10%. Under current state law, that limit is 35%. And that is pretty high. Like I said, I mean, in the 90s, I don't even know that it got over 12%. You know, I mean, cannabis was pretty frequently at about 5 or 6. And it did all of us fine. So we'll see how that goes. But I don't see this getting passed at all. But cannabis moment, Idaho Republican lawmaker files medical cannabis legalization bill. Now, Idaho is crazy. They don't believe in anything. So if this gets passed, this is going to be this is going to be pretty amazing, but I doubt it. A new bill designed to provide for a tightly regulated system was introduced Friday morning in the Idaho House of Representatives. Republican introduced House Bill 370, an Idaho Medical Cannabis Act, as a personal bill on the floor. In practice, personal bills typically do not advance because they circumvent the committee process and are often introduced to start a discussion and lay the groundwork for future policy discussions. Which there's literally zero discussions happening in Idaho. So that's good. Ben & Jerry's co-founder launches nonprofit cannabis brand. Ben & Jerry has launched a cannabis brand, and they'll use it for social benefit. B3 is a registered nonprofit, and 80% of the company's profits will be administered in partnership. They'll go to the Last Prisoner Project. 10% will be donated to the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance. And the company's stated mission is sell great cannabis and use the power of business to right the wrongs of the war on drugs. Cohen says Schedule 1 is the whole root of the war on drugs. Schedule 1 is supposed to be for drugs that have no medical value and have a risk of addiction, which does not apply to cannabis, but it does apply to beer. And that's just, is what it is. And that's crazy to me. I just don't get it. But anyway, thank you for joining me on another rabble-rousing version of Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. I just want to tell you a little something. Programming on KRFF, LPFM, Radio Free Fargo, 95.9 FM has been underwritten by Flatland Guitar and Lutherie. Flatland Guitars, your full-service guitar shop and your exclusive dealer for Yamaha, Taylor, Paul Reed Smith guitars and other brands. They sell guitars on consignment. They take trade-ins and have a full-service on-site repair center. Check out Flatland Guitar and Lutherie on Facebook. Or visit them in person at 1450 25th Street South in Fargo. Their hours are Monday through Friday 10 to 6, Saturdays 10 to 5, closed on Lord's Day. Again, thank you for checking me out. Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. Every Thursday I get in here for 4:20, open a big fat bag of cannabis news. And I believe that I just succeeded in providing that for you. And now I'm going to play a little music. Here's Vinny the Crow by Jeff Coffin, 95.9. Bam. Vinny the Crow, Jeff Coffin on 95.9 RadioFreeFargo.org. You're listening to Canna-Talk ND with Wilson as I leave and head out the door. Up next, Stinky Arts Music Mart. And then Fred, spelled with a P, takes you the rest of the way home on your Thursday here at KRFF. I talk about cannabis, and I'll be back next Thursday to do so. This show is brought to you by Black Cottage Alchemy, blackcottagealchemy.com, Black Cottage Alchemy on Facebook. Body butter. It's got colloidal silver. It's got 1,600 mgs of CBD. I'm using it on this mysterious blue dot that showed up on my face. You can use it for all kinds of stuff. On your feet, on your head, on your belly, on your butt. But anyway, thank you, Black Cottage Alchemy, for sponsoring this show. And again, 10 o'clock, Antioch Church, Life After Recovery. If you got a monkey on your back or you've kicked him off on your own and you can feel him still climbing up your pant leg, we have an alternative. Come check us out. Educate yourselves on the benefits of cannabis so you can educate others on the benefits of cannabis. I'll be back next Thursday again. Up next is Stinky Arts Music Mart. Now, David Allen, Judgment Day. Peace.